On WebcastOneLive.com, the Legislative Hour with your hosts, Art Smith and Kevin Hall.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the Iowa Legislative Hour, powered by Webcast One Live. I am your host, Kevin Hall, along with my co-host, Art Smith. Art, minus the goatee, which I'm very disappointed in you about. What is going on?
That's probably only the third thing that's disappointed you about me this week.
Well, there have been a few.
No, I just, I've had it for 30 years, and I decided it was time for a little change. So zipped it off a couple of days ago. And
30 years?
Yeah, 30 years.
Wow.
And I've only had like 3 people notice. One of them was my wife. So
well, that's good.
But no, it's just a little subtle change. So hopefully nobody gets too worked up about it.
Brad, what do you think?
I like it.
Do you?
I like it, yes.
All right.
I don't know. You've left the club, so I don't know if we can even have you on the show anymore. I mean, you kind of got to sport the. I thought that was the agreement that we signed.
Was it?
Yeah.
We had to be the Goatee Brothers?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that works. Not at all. I think we need to differentiate ourselves a little bit.
All right. Let's get to the topics at hand, and that, of course, being Iowa politics. And our special guest this week, frequent visitor here with us, Senator Brad Zahn from Urbandale. Brad, good to see you again.
Good to be with both of you again.
And new to the show this week, Senator Tim Capuchin from Keystone. Senator, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's just get to know you a little bit and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about you. You are from Keystone. Now, what county is Keystone?
Benton County.
Benton
I'm about
County.
30 miles west of Cedar Rapids. I'm a lifelong farmer, past grain and livestock operation. And the last 10 or so years focused on grain, and I've been active in a lot of the rural groups, the commodity groups. Served a long time ago in the Iowa Pork Producers. Actually was president of that group back in 1993. And got involved a little bit in politics back then, some lobbying efforts on our behalf. And when I got out of the livestock industry and then got a little more involved with some of the campaigns, and then my senator would decide to retire from politics and gave me an opportunity. And so I just won re-election for my second term.
Okay.
My first term was Senate District 20, which included all of Benton, most of Tama, and all of Grundy County, and just a little bit of Iowa County.
Okay.
And then after redistricting, I lost Tama and Grundy.
Okay.
Kept Benton, of course, where I live.
Sure.
And picked up the rest of Iowa County and then over to Poweshiek County.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm sorry, it's Senate District 38 now.
Okay.
Senate District 38. And what committees do you serve on in the Iowa Senate?
I'm on agriculture. I'm ranking member on transportation. I'm also on a subcommittee, infrastructure, capitals, appropriations. I'm on the full appropriations. And then I've just got put on the international relations when we have foreign visitors.
Oh, okay.
I'm part of the host committee.
Very
All
nice.
right.
Well, let's get to one of the hot topics in the news of the last couple days, last 24 hours. Senator Zahn has made news in the Des Moines Register and some of the TV stations as well for his opposition to Governor Branstad's nominees for the Board of Regents. Brad, can you tell us, first of all, what is your reasoning for saying you will not vote for any of the 3 nominees for the Board of Regents?
Well, first of all, I have been for years been frustrated with the Board of Regents. I've made that known through the Vilsack years, through the Culver years, and I just question, some of the decisions they've made. I recall years ago saying to David Miles, who was an appointee, that don't forget about the kids and the parents that are writing those checks on a month-to-month basis. And I've been on the floor many times and said, we have got to have more parents rather than political insiders, political contributors that are represent us on the Board of Regents. Now, I recognize and have voted against many Board of Regents nominees in the past. You could say what I did yesterday was symbolic. I'm frustrated. I was there. I'm on the Education Committee, and I listened to the interviews of all 3 of the nominees that were there. And I recognize they're good Iowans. This is not a paid position. This is a voluntary position. and I asked him some pointing questions about the tuition set aside. Is something I've been very passionate about. I wasn't satisfied with the answers I got. But once again, as I mentioned to the press, didn't realize that I was going to create this firestorm. I have voted against Republican Board of Regent nominees in the past, and so I mentioned to the press afterwards, I was asked if it was symbolic. Yes, it is symbolic. I guess now I did get some people's attention in regards to, let's get some parents. And full disclosure, I am a dad that sends my son in up to University of Northern Iowa, and he's going to be transferring to Iowa. And I am frustrated. I see tuition out of control, increases every year. I see that there's building projects that I question that's going on. I certainly recognize in Iowa City with the floods that some of that had to happen. And I see the student fees, activity fees, are just out of control. And we are one of the #1 states in the United States for student debt. And I've asked questions about graduation rates. I've asked questions about how long does it take. I can never get an answer. And so I'm very frustrated. With that said, I reserve my right, and I said this last night, to change my vote. I guess what's really bothersome to me is everybody thinks that this is against Governor Branstad, and it's not against Governor Branstad. I will tell you that I'm happy that Governor Branstad is our governor. I don't say that because I've taken the heat the last 24 hours. And if you question my integrity or if I really support Governor Branstad, it was a week ago. Everybody was clapping at me because they called him a liar 3 times on the floor.
Right.
And I called point of order and argued that that's inappropriate. Governor Branstad has good intentions. We're not always going to agree. I disagree with some of the education reforms that are out there. But that is why I did what I did. I am frustrated, and I'm not going to get into personalities. And I reserve the right to make a change if I decide not because of political pressure. Obviously, I've gotten a lot of phone calls, but I guess what maybe you all are not exposed to is all the emails. Excuse me. Seriously, at least 100 emails have come in the last 24 hours from parents and Iowans and kids in these schools that are saying, you know, thank you for having the guts to say this. And I'm a parent or I'm a student, and we struggle to do this. And so anyway, I was very upset with the Board of Regents, the current Board of Regents, in their response to us about the tuition set aside, which Iowans were outraged about, this 20% that was taken out and given to another student, which I want to help out kids that are less fortunate, but I don't like it snuck into the check that I'm writing every month. But I've heard from so many different people that are saying, thank you for sticking up for us. And so it's not a political thing for me.
Okay.
There was one Democrat or one independent, left-leaning, I guess he's giving a lot of money to Democrats, and 2 Republicans. And I recognize they're not the hugest donors that are out there.
Right.
You know, they're contributors and they're insiders. All of them are. And so... And I know one of the members. I know him because he was served on the Johnson School Board, and I actually like what he did on the school board.
That being Robert Kramer.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he's one that I really it wasn't personal towards him or anyone else. So that is to answer. It's a long answer why I did what I did.
And just so people are clear, the Board of Regents is basically the board of directors that oversees Iowa's public universities.
That's correct. The 3, and there's some other responsibilities they have too, Department of Blind.
And the nominees were Craig Lang, who is the current president of the Board of Regents, Robert Kramer, who's a local construction executive. I believe he's in your Senate district,
That
so
is
you
correct.
are his state senator. And Dr. Subhash Sahai, I hope I said that right, he's from Webster City, and he is a Democrat. And what happens is they came before the 15-member Education Board in the Senate, and the Senate gives a recommendation on whether or not they approve of this that goes to the full Senate, and then for them to be confirmed, it requires a 2/3 vote.
That is correct.
So 2 of these guys, obviously, they are open Republicans. Lang and Kramer are Republicans. It's going to be hard for them to get past the Senate, and there were some other issues with the Democrats and what they were saying about these nominees that we'll bring that up as well. I guess there's some concern and some not really understanding among Republicans of why you would come out and oppose these nominees when they're probably going to have a tough time getting confirmed in a Democrat-controlled Senate as it is. So, they're thinking, well, we've got to get 10 votes or whatever it is from Democrats to come over. And now, if you're saying you're not going to vote for them, that's going to be 11.
Well, first of all, if you might have missed what I said earlier, I reserve the right to change my opinion on that.
Right.
But that's not my responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
My responsibility is not to the Republican Party of Iowa or the governor of the state of Iowa, but it's to the people that I represent.
Yep.
And I'm going to always, Kevin and Art, you guys have known me for a long time.
Yep.
I basically tell it the way it is. I don't always do the party line.
Right.
I certainly will tell you this. I did not do anything to try to hurt anyone. Listen, I vote against Ruth Harkin. The list goes on. Michael Gardner and Teresa Weiler. And I mean, I do that because I think that's right. Usually my beliefs are not with theirs. With that said, if you were in that room with the interviews that were going on, I'll just tell you right now, I was disappointed in Regent Lang's response on several questions. One being that he didn't read the actual contract for the Harkin Institute, and his response to us was, I don't like bad news. Well, I and all the kids and parents, and probably everyone in this room, deal with reality, okay? And you have to know the facts before you go into something. And then he readily admitted, I made a mistake, and I shouldn't, I'll read it now. I expect more out of my regent than that. And I know Mr. Lang. I've known him for years with the Farm Bureau, and I don't have a problem with him personally. I thought the arrogance of the Democratic nominee was very prevalent in his interviews and didn't really answer really any questions. And so I have some concerns there as well. I will say that Mr. Kramer, one thing that is needed in our Regents universities with all these building projects that are going on, especially in Iowa City, so we need someone with a construction background to get in there and do that. Also recognizing the type of person he is, and I don't know Mr. Lang as well as I know Mr. Kramer. He is a foster parent. I've heard nothing but good things about him when he was on the Johnson School Board. So that was not my reasoning for that. But like I said originally, I was really sending a message and taking a stand, and we'll see what happens. At this point, I will be free with you. I don't plan on making any changes. But I'll tell you one thing I will not be doing. I will not be forced into making any changes based on a big donor. And I've heard from some people, Republican donors or the establishment. What is disappointing, since I have this microphone right now,
you have free reign.
I had one of our caucus people in our caucus, I won't say his name, but he said, hey, listen, have you seen the IowaRepublican.com? I go, no, I don't read the IowaRepublican.com. He said, you ought to see what they're saying about you. And he shared some of the things with me about some of the personal dirty tricks that Leonard Boswell pulled. And it is disappointing in me. I can take the heat. But I do think that it's really unfortunate when we're supposed to all be Republicans here. Listen, I've been threatened my political life so many different times, and I keep getting reelected. And when someone comes in and tells me, listen, I will campaign against you and work hard against you, which they did when I was a mayor and state senator, I say this: you've made a big assumption that I'm going to be running again. Listen, I do this with my heart intent, and I know I disappointed some people, including the website that you're a part of. But listen, I think you all ought to know I do what I think is right, and I do it with good intentions.
And are you talking about the comments section with the?
Well, I haven't. I didn't read it, and I didn't read the comments. Okay. But I've been told what they were. Just some brief little things from our one of our caucus people. And
full disclosure, I do write for the Iowa Republican.
And you do a very, very good job.
Thank you.
You and I have never had problems. So.
But our founder, Craig Robinson, was critical of you in his article.
I didn't read it, but hey, listen, he has a website. He can say whatever he wants to say.
One of the things the Register wrote in their article is that you don't like that political contributors are the ones who... Is that your primary bone of contention with this?
Well, it's just more of a political insiders than it is.
Okay.
I mean, we all know who the Board of Regents are. We know that there's some Board of Regents that are there that write a lot of big checks. And there's several of them. And there always has been. Listen, this has happened when Governor Culver was there, as well as when Governor Vilsack was there. And I've raised the same concerns then. And so anyway, like I said, one thing I would like to, it's not about Governor Branstad. I think he's a great governor. His intentions are in the right place. We're not always going to agree, but it is not about that. And if it wasn't about that, I wouldn't have stood up for him on the floor a week ago.
So let me ask you a question. Conceivably, this goes to the full Senate and gets voted down. I mean, it wasn't just, in terms of the overall committee recommendation, this wasn't the only issue that was raised.
And the committee, they did recommend Dr. Sahai. They did not recommend
the two
Kramer and Lang.
Yep.
Right, the
They
two
were
Republicans.
sent out without recommendation, which means they're still eligible for full Senate vote.
Okay.
We want to go through the whole process of how this happens.
Right.
What we do is, and I've been down there for 8 years, is in the past, whoever the party is that wants to take down the candidate, if the Republicans, and it's whoever's the opposite of the governor, whoever's sitting the governor. In the past, Stu Iverson, who was our leader, would call down to Governor Culver or Vilsack and say, this person doesn't have the votes out of courtesy, and then the governor gets to decide if he's going to put him up on the board or not, just so there isn't some public humiliation that's going on. Okay. I have seen it happen both ways. I've seen it where he said, hell yeah, I'm putting him up. And so I'm
gonna go ahead and take this same conversation and bring it over to Senator Capuchin. Let's say this comes to the Senate.
Thanks.
Let's say this comes to the full Senate,
Yes.
and the Democrat and I haven't written down the names, so you had the names. You were very helpful there.
Dr. Sabash Sahai.
Yeah, it was also because I wanted to hear you say that again. So let's say,
let me butcher it.
Let's say that the doctor is approved, and the other two gentlemen they're all three men, right?
Yes.
that's correct.
I'm getting that kind of stuff messed up lately.
Yeah.
Too. Before the show, we had a little of that conversation. So, so let's say that those two gentlemen are not approved by the Senate. What would you recommend to the governor to do to bring two new candidates to the table?
Well, I think the governor obviously would have to go back in through his selection process and see who he has next on the list, who he's got in mind. Maybe bounce some things off some of the rest of us before he brings someone forward.
Okay.
I think that would be ideal.
So
I don't think that I'm not so sure if he foresaw any problems. Otherwise, obviously, he probably would have done this before.
Sure.
I've known Craig Lang a long time. I'm going to support Craig Lang. I think Craig is a thoughtful man. He's doing what he can. I trust him from his years of service at Farm Bureau. I think in the ag world, he's a leader. He's been a leader. And I honestly believe he's trying to do the best thing that he can. Not serving on the Education Committee, I wasn't privy to those interviews. And before this vote comes to the floor, I'm going to have to do some research on the other two men. But I'm assuming that I'm probably going to support them unless I find something in their background that I don't care for. But I am going to support Craig Lang at this time.
Okay.
Well, and Senator Cornbach, Democrat from Ames, it seemed his major bone of contention with Robert Kramer is that he's a social conservative. He told the Register, Cornbach did, that, over the last decade, a lot of people have, let's say, evolved in their views with regard to sexual orientation and gay rights. I was not persuaded that he, Kramer, has. Should that disqualify someone from the Board of Regents because they believe in traditional one-man, one-woman marriage?
Absolutely not.
Well, it seems Senator Cornbach thinks
that's
that.
wrong for him to do that. Mr. Kramer was very vocal in committee saying, listen, this is who I am. I'm not going to back down from who I am. He was pressed pretty hard about would he follow through with his beliefs. I thought he answered things correctly. So to answer your question, I do not think it should be. Because it should be based on the job that you're about to perform. And I think that, I don't think that would be a reason to throw him out.
Do you think that the concerns from Democrats are about the makeup of the Board of Regents, or is it about making political points in the midst of this exercise?
I think there's definite politics involved. There's no doubt about that. Let's just you go back to history when we were on the other side of the fence here, and we were the ones that were bringing people down. Unfortunately, we pick a couple of them that we're going to take down. And we have been successful sometimes and sometimes not successful. And I do not think that, so it does happen. We'll just have to see what happens. I would definitely agree that there's that it's problematic. But you got to remember, there's more to just what you identified, Kevin. You're talking about the Harkin Institute.
Yep.
They're very protective of that, and some of the decisions that were made there. And and I would even say that if Bruce Ratstetler decides to move his, or any other of those regents that are there, decide to be renominated, they're going to have these same questions are going to get asked to them, in particular about the Harkin Institute.
Okay. You're listening to the Iowa Legislative Hour. This is Art Smith with Kevin Hall. We have Senators Brad Zahn and Tim Capuchin with us today. And we're going to go to a break. And if you have some questions for the senators, you can call in at 855-244-0077. And we'll be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Fight the good fight on a Rebels Cause Radio, Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on a rebelscause.com. A Rebels Cause Radio is edutainment.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And we're back. This is the Iowa Legislative Hour. This is Art Smith with Kevin Hall. Kevin's sitting over there just laughing at me now because I stumbled over myself. And we have Senators Tim Capuchin from Keystone, Iowa, and Brad Zahn from Urbandale. We spent the first 20 minutes talking about education and the state regents. We'd like to go ahead and give Senator Capuchin a little bit of time to talk about some stuff that he's really focused on in the
Brad, quit hogging all the time.
Yeah.
You guys were talking.
Yeah, I think actually, Kevin, I think you set him up for that.
Yeah, I kind of did.
But Senator, can you?
Sure.
You're really focused on ag is kind of your primary area that you deal with, and as a farmer, you have a lot of experience in that. Tell us what's happening right now in the Senate, and what types of things can we be looking for to be coming down?
Sure.
This session?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I believe, and I truly believe this, that the reason Iowa fared so well through the recession that we're supposedly climbing out of was because of agriculture, because we have a strong ag base. That's what no matter how much manufacturing, no matter how much tech stuff's going on here in Des Moines and some of the cities around the state, agriculture still is the bread and butter. It still holds us together here in Iowa, and I think that's why we fared so well. And one of the reasons why I ran for Senate was I saw our representation down here dwindling.
Okay.
I'm pleased to say that there are more farmers back in the Senate this year than I've seen in a long time. And this week specifically was Ag Week. National Ag Day was on Tuesday. And I made a personal point about a gentleman from long ago from my former district, actually Tama County, and his name was Tama Jim Wilson. Many people in the state do not know who this guy was. He came from Scotland back in 1835. He was born. He immigrated here when he was 16 years old, first to Connecticut. Then they settled in Traer, Iowa, which is in Tama County, about 25 miles from me. Came there with his family. He was a child, one of 14. They started farming. In the winter, he started going to college after he got old enough. He went to Iowa College, which is now Grinnell College, which is in my new district. So I have ties from my old district and my new district. And he went on to be very revered in the ag in community. And as a matter of fact, back around the turn of the century, not this last one, but
the one before.
Yeah. Henry C. Wallace recommended to the president at that time that he appoint Tama Jim as Secretary of Agriculture, and that was 1897. The man was 62 years old. He'd been teaching at Iowa State at that time, Iowa State College, and he went on to serve 16 years as Secretary of Agriculture under 3 presidents, McKinley, Taft, and Teddy Roosevelt.
Wow.
To this day, it's the longest-serving cabinet member in the history of the United States. Before he got there, the Department of Agriculture was a do-nothing joke of a department. By the time he left, it had grown and had become one of the most important departments in our country. He introduced a lot of new varieties of plants, new species of animals for the area. And anyway, the long and the short of it is, he ended up back there. He passed away and was buried out there. And I think now I've heard from the local community as well, none of us believe that he gets the recognition he deserves and for what he did for not only Iowa but for agriculture. And I think his name needs to be synonymous with the Wallaces and those types of people that have, are known throughout Iowa history and the history of the United States. Now, a couple of bills that I ran this year that may seem trivial, but to a farmer they could be rather important. I heard from some constituents the last year where if you know farming at all, if you have a contract, you're renting a farm, a lot of times the first year you rent a farm, you sign a contract, and then the landlord and the tenant relationship develops and they never renew a contract. It just automatically renews.
Sure.
And you have, as a landlord, if you don't want to renew a written contract, it stays in effect after September 1. That's the deadline. So if you're a renter, if I get on notice by September 1, I might be losing this farm.
Right.
If I don't, I'm good for another year.
Right.
So most farmers operate under that assumption. Well, there's a little quirk in the law that says if it's less than 40 acres, that doesn't apply.
Okay.
So some guys had a small parcel in the fall. They might apply fertilizer. They buy their inputs, secure their credit. They maybe do some fall tillage, fully expecting to farm that plot the next year.
Yep.
And then to find out about this time of year, I rented it to the neighbor. He gave me $20 an acre more. So I had a bill, and we got it unanimously out of the Senate. It's on its way over to the House that would just exempt that 40 acres. However, and everybody needs to know this, and I think most people do, that any written contract would supersede this. This is only in effect for those cases where there is not a written contract.
Right.
And especially, I know the cattlemen have come to me, and so they're really interested in this bill because they have a lot of small, less than 40-acre pasture parcels, and they never know from year to year where they stand with the landlord.
Right.
And this will help secure that. And a lot of the smaller beginning farmers, I think, will help them. Another issue that I ran a bill on and it subsequently pulled because my main purpose was to raise awareness, and I think I did that. It's CSR2. CSR is a rating that is given to the soil that will tell a farmer just by that one number what the corn productivity of it is, what the productivity of that soil is. It's a 0 to 100 rating, 100 being the best. There's very little 100 CSR ground, but there is some. That means that's the best producing corn ground. It's specific to Iowa. Every state has their own system, but in Iowa we call it CSR. That stands for Corn Suitability Rating. Iowa State developed this in the 70s, and now NRCS, the federal branch of USDA that oversees these types of programs and numbering and all this stuff, they said, wait a minute, the weather patterns have changed enough and our farming practices have changed enough that up in northwest Iowa specifically, or especially up in northwest Iowa, some of the CSR ground that's rated at 75 is now producing like CSR 85. And so the old CSR system may not be as relevant as we'd like it to be. So NRCS asked Iowa State to develop a new system. And so it's being tagged CSR2. Okay, in the meantime, it was supposed to come out last fall, and it's taken longer than what they thought. There's a lot more work and a lot more calculations involved. So a couple of the people were put it on the internet to work back and forth among themselves, and they had a couple of counties with CSR2 listed. All of a sudden, land sales started showing up with CSR2 ratings. Farmers and the ag community were unaware that CSR2 was even coming out. They didn't know what CSR2 was. They assumed it was CSR. In a lot of cases where CSR2 was higher, it was being advertised as the higher level. My bill simply said for the next 2 years that if you're going to use CSR2, then you also have to list CSR until the ag community becomes familiar with this change. I had some feedback from realtors saying, you know, this isn't really your business. You should be staying out of this. And got enough pushback that I had a subcommittee on it. I said, I'm still going to have a subcommittee. I'm just not going to push it as a bill. If somebody else wants to pick up, run with it. I think I've got my point across by making people aware of it. And so I hope I have done that by bringing that forward. The big thing in agriculture this year is the water quality impact that we're going to have. You've heard Secretary Northey and Director Gipp have put together between the Department of Natural Resources and the Iowa Department of Agriculture. We're going to do a massive influx of trying to do more conservation practices. We're going to try, there's a long waiting list of state cost share that farmers can apply for help from the state to redo waterways, reseed your waterways, reshape them, hopefully control some erosion, some structures that stop the soil from leaving the farm. And there's going to be a major emphasis, I believe, in the next couple of years trying to save our soil better than we have. We've done a remarkable job since the 70s. And that's one of my key concerns is that why don't we start measuring from back in the 70s? Because you know as well as I do, when you try to make progress on something, just like if you want to start losing weight, the first 20 pounds come off like that. And the next 5, the next 10, or 10, the next 5, the next 1, they get harder and harder. I think we should be given some credit for the progress we've made since the 70s because now we're going to start from where we're at today. And we're already made some pretty big strides, but now everything incremental increase is going to be harder to get to.
Of course, the current U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, our former governor, overall, how do you think he has done in that position?
You know, I got to be honest, when he first was appointed to that office, I laughed. I remember specifically that President Obama introduced him and said, everybody knows you can't know agriculture if you've been governor of Iowa. And I thought, this is not true. I know it's not true. But I think Secretary Vilsack overall had a steep learning curve, and I think he did a very good job. I think most of the people I've talked to have had honest and fair dealings with the man, and overall I think he's done a decent job and has represented Iowa well. And so I'm not here to cut down Secretary Vilsack. I think he's performed better than I expected in that position.
Brad, what do you think? How is Secretary Vilsack? Not that you're an ag expert or anything, but...
Well, you know, I come from an ag background. My dad had a John Deere dealership. Agriculture has changed a lot. I'm really happy that he is in the position that he is, because we need people. You know, a lot of agriculture issues are very complicated, and I get the opportunity where I just go back to see him or Jerry Bain, who are in the farmers, and say, how does this affect you? So we're really fortunate to have Tim, and I think he's assistant leader too, by the way. You know, I've served with Governor Vilsack. I was very frustrated when I did serve with him. In regards to the Secretary of Agriculture, the only thing I would have in regards to my concerns is the expansion of the food stamp program, and that's a big part of his budget. And I really think that shouldn't be in his budget. I mean, it should be about agriculture. But no, I know Tom, and I ran into him when I was in D.C. the last time, and we actually sat and had a good conversation with him. So I would agree with what you said. I think he's done a good job, and certainly he's asked a lot, do a lot, and I think he's a true statesman in D.C.
There are some grumblings or rumblings that he might return here and maybe challenge Governor Branstad for the governor's race in 2016. Any thoughts on that?
I served with him, and I'm darn glad that Governor Branstad's there. That would be a very very expensive race.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people that like Tom, Governor Vilsack, but I think he would be bad for Iowa as governor compared to Governor Branstad.
Senator Capuchin, your thoughts on the possibility?
In politics, anything's possible.
Yes.
You hear a new name every day.
Yes.
You hear another name from yesterday dispelled. No, that's not going to happen. He's not going to do that. So until they actually file their papers and start running, I guess anybody's fair game out there. It would be a very costly. I've heard it described. Somebody said it would be the battle of the Titans.
Yeah,
and it truly would. Yeah. And both men have the ability to raise a lot of money, and it would be a very costly race, I believe. Senator,
can I ask you one more question about agriculture?
Absolutely.
What do you think right now is the biggest threat to agriculture in Iowa?
Overregulation. I think that, for example, we had a meeting last week we brought in some producers and some packers, and a freshman Senator Zumbaugh from Ryan had been home over the weekend and was talking with his friends and neighbors, and there's a concern about we've been so eager as and some of this might be coming from USDA, but from the government in general, over how animal welfare is treated and concerned in the ag community. And I think we've been overzealous there a little bit. Some of the packers are trying to get ahead of the curve. And what was happening was when a producer would take a load of pigs into the packing plant, even though he still owns those pigs, they're on his trailer or a trucker's trailer, they'll come in and you only have so long to unload them. Then they'll come in and see if there's a slow pig, or some pigs get a little nervous and don't want to move. And after so long, they just come in and shoot them right on the trailer. Okay. So the producer, and a pig right now's market hog is probably worth about $200. So not only are you going to lose that $200, then they charge you to drag them off and dispose of them. And it's all because the animal welfare treatment of the animals, they don't want any animal to have any undue suffering. And so if they think there's any lag there, and they can shut down their whole packing plant line because of something like this. So
wow.
I think the packers have been overly aggressive. The one plant that we talked to last year alone, I think the number was they had gone on farmers' trucks and killed 1,300 head of hogs.
Wow.
That's a lot of wasted protein.
Yeah.
And a lot of these pigs, there was nothing wrong, just that they were nervous and a little excited and needed just a little time to rest, and they'd have been fine. And so it's a big loss to the farmer, the producer. And then last week we heard of a gentleman, a neighbor, same area, northeast Iowa, took some market cattle into Wisconsin to a packing plant, and they just went in and shot a steer, probably valued at $1,500, right on the guy's trailer. And my biggest concern here is the packer doesn't even own the animal yet.
Yeah,
it's still in the ownership of the producer. They're coming on another man's trailer, shooting another man's livestock.
How are they able to do that without? I mean,
it's just the way the system, and we're checking into it. We want to know where are our rights as producers, and where does that ownership? I mean, it's still mine. I asked specifically, where does the ownership change on that animal? And they said it's the hot carcass weight as it goes across scale.
Yeah.
So I said, then you don't own that pig when you're shooting him. Right. No, we don't.
Unbelievable.
To me, that's no different than walking into my barn and starting shooting my livestock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
right. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Senator Zumbaugh's really taking this one by the horns, and
Literally.
Yeah, so to speak. I don't mean to be, no pun intended, but so we're going to continue to delve into this a little more.
Okay.
This is the Iowa Legislative Hour. Kevin Hall along with Art Smith. Our guests, Senators Brad Zahn and Senator Tim Capuchin. We're going to still have some legislative topics to talk about. Medicaid expansion is on the docket for the state Senate next week, as well as education reform. Those topics and more when we return on Webcast One Live.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to the Iowa Legislative Hour. Kevin Hall, along with my esteemed co-host Art Smith, the beardless one.
Yeah, I don't know. There's less steam, I think, this week.
Yes,
without the beard.
Yes, less esteem for sure. And our guest, Senator Brad Zahn from Urbandale, Senator Tim Capuchin from Keystone in eastern Iowa. Gentlemen, Medicaid expansion set to come up for debate in the Iowa Senate this week. Of course, the big issue is part of Obamacare. They want the states, the deal is the federal government has says we will pay 100% for this huge expansion of Medicaid for the first 3 years, and then it goes down to 90% the year after that. Governor Branstad has his own plan. He is one of the Republican governors holding out against this expansion of government. What do you think is going to happen here, and what's your take on it?
Well, first of all, I've been told we're going to debate this on next week. My prediction is it'll get out of the Senate, be sent to the House, and it'll die. But obviously, this is something that we need to address. The governor has come up with a brand new Iowa Cares program, which he calls the Healthy Iowans Plan. And I actually wrote about it in my newsletter this week. It was really easy to understand how this program works. What the Medicaid expansion does is it adds 153,000 Iowans in addition to what's there on the Medicaid rolls. I have no problem helping people out. My biggest concern is when we send someone from Washington, D.C., or when the banks call the notes and say, you're done, is that they're saying that they'll guarantee 90%, but the first place that those people in Washington, D.C. will cut, they will be cutting the funding that comes in the states. That is my concern, as well as Governor Branstad's concern. And so I don't like to get ourselves in a position where believe me, when you start this stuff and you get people on these different programs, it's very, very difficult to take them off the programs. You can just take a lesson of what's going on in Europe right now. So I'm going to be voting no on the Medicaid expansion, and I'm going to be supporting what the governor's offered.
Senator Capuchin, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion?
Yeah, I've heard the debates in chamber. I'm not on the committee. Senator Johnson's our point man, Senator Johnson from Ocheyedan, Northwest Iowa, and he's been working this very hard, very diligently. And we talked to him briefly on the way out, and he's the one that told us there's going to be a vote next week. And how this whole package comes together, the cross between Iowa Care and the Iowa Healthy Plan or Medicaid expansion, we'd like to see the best of all worlds,
right?
And how that all comes down together. I haven't seen the final plan yet, but my concerns are the same as the governor's, the same as Brad's. We could be getting set up for a major layout on our behalf. And I know the Democrats talked this week about, well, we'll give you that option. If the sky
3 years.
falls, if the sky falls, then we're not going to be on the hook. Well, I don't know how you do that when it's a federal program. Once you're in, you're probably always going to be in. Yeah. It's like Brad said, the last thing I want to do is get people set up on a plan and then take it away from them. It's hard to do. I don't like doing that. I don't like things having been taken away from me. So I don't want to set ourselves up for anything. I know that the Iowa Cares program has a lot of work to be done on it. We can't go back to that. The biggest concern I had there was the lack of facilities that you were available to go to, a lot of transportation costs. And I think part of the proposal is to open that up so that you can go to the hospital of your choice or the closest one to you. And then the sign-up was atrocious. I mean, you could sign up and they would ask what your income was to see if you qualify. If you didn't fill that in, they didn't ask you, you were automatically in. So Brad and I could have qualified. And then after that, on a monthly basis, if you had some excuse, didn't matter what it was, they couldn't turn you down. You could set an excuse why you were having trouble making your payment that month, and there were no questions asked. You just weren't required to pay. Wow. And you could continue to do that. There was no limit. You could do that every month. And so that old system definitely needed fixing. It's not the answer. So I like what the governor's trying to bring out, a new program, but this is all going to hash out. There's, this it's just like the budget. It's like allowable growth, like everything else. I tell the people back home, it's like when you go buy a new car. You go in and ask, what do you want? And they say 20,000, and I say, I'm going to give you 15. The parameters have been set. We know we're going to end up somewhere in between. And that's just the way politics works. It's an art of negotiation.
You mentioned allowable growth, so let's head there. That's scheduled to begin debate Monday at 5 o'clock. So Monday, maybe pack your sleeping bags. It might be a late night at the Capitol for you. They have scheduled to discuss, that's when the Medicaid expansion will take place. Education reform will take place Tuesday. And, of course, the Senate Democrats, they've passed 4% allowable growth. The House budget, which has passed, based on Governor Branstad's education reform package, 2% allowable growth. What are your thoughts on education reform? What's going to happen? We'll start with you, Senator Capuchin.
Yeah, as far as the total package of education reform, I think it's going to be bits and pieces, just like last year. We're not going to get a total package. There's not going to be star flash in front of your eyes and the problem's going to be solved. It's going to be bits and pieces. It's going to be continued. We never do a big program like this all in one felled swoop. It takes several years. And so I think we're going to continue to work on this. A couple of things in the program that I really like. I like the fact that if you're one of the top students coming out of an Iowa County, an Iowa student, and we want to retain you as a teacher, we will help pay off your college debt up to $20,000 over a 4-year period of time if you stay in Iowa and teach. I like that. A debate back and forth on extending the student-teacher plan from 6 months to a year. I think there's somewhere in between maybe. So where that all falls down, I don't know. Allowable growth, I'm going to go back to the car scenario. If I'm a betting man, I'm saying 3%.
somewhere in between. Senator Zahn, we've had Senator Whitver in here, and his prognostication for the bill is most of the good stuff will be stripped out of it, and especially from what the House passed. If there was something from the House bill that you would most like to preserve, is there one thing in particular you'd like to see in this budget to pass the Senate?
Well, the online learning component of the House bill was something that I could get behind. That was probably, if you're asking, there's the answer to your question. I would just say that the online learning, there's other components that I liked as well. There's others that I'm concerned about as well. But the online component was a good thing for students in the state of Iowa.
I would like to add, as a rural legislator, another component that was coming out of the House that I liked, and I don't know the exact numbers on, but there was some additional aid for transportation. And transportation busing costs in the rural districts are phenomenal. I mean, it's one of our major expenses, and if we can offset some of that from help with the state, that would be a tremendous asset, I think, and a big advantage to us.
What about allowing homeschool educators to do driver's education? I know that was, for a lot of homeschoolers, that was a hot topic in the House bill.
I think that if you're going to educate your child to drive, that they need to do the driving test. I was shocked. I don't have any kids of my own that went through. I have stepchildren that were older than that. But I thought that everybody took a driver's driving test when you got a driver's license. That's not the case anymore.
I didn't because I took driver ed in high school as a class. So I didn't need to take the driving test to get my license. I just needed to show them that I had taken the class.
Right. And I think maybe the part of the give and take here would be, if you're going to teach your own child how to drive, then maybe they need to take a driving test to get their license. And I would extend it not just to homeschoolers. I think every parent should have that option then. If a homeschooler can teach his child to drive without any special other type of class, then any other parent should as well.
Sure.
There was a bill passed this week. In fact, might have been today, Senate File 88. It approved the earned income tax credit. I assume this was an expansion of where it is now, averaging $264 per household for low-income Iowa families. The vote in the Senate was 35 to 15. Brad, how did you vote?
I voted for. I voted for that.
Okay.
And actually, the bill that we voted on expanded from 7 to 20%. The Senate Republicans offered an amendment to say go 7 to 10. I thought Senator Shelgren made the best point on the floor, saying, listen, you did this last year. We supported last year, and you didn't get it. So why not go to 10, which is a step in the right direction. The governor said that he would sign it. The House would approve it. It'd be a step in the right direction. I'm always for any tax break to any Iowan, and I understand the arguments for that. I don't know how you voted on that.
I voted for, I think it was Senator Feenster's actual amendment to go to 10%.
Okay.
I voted for that. It failed, but I then went ahead and voted for the rest of the bill.
Okay.
I agree with Brad. If we can give somebody a break on their taxes, fine. I have a big problem with most other tax credits, though. It's foo-foo dust. I mean, I'll give you a credit, but you might not get it. You know, and that's where the other side of the aisle and us differ. I want to give the tax break. They want to give credit. They want to give you a break if the state performs above a certain level. How do you take that to a bank? How do you go to a bank with a business plan and say, well, I'm going to get this tax break. I know that's not a big factor in a loan, but still, if you will use that in a business scenario, how far would you get with a banker?
Right.
If this happens, I get this. If that happens, I get that.
Brad, you alluded to this earlier in the show, and we just have a few minutes left, so I don't want to go deep heavily into this. But since you weren't with us last week, you mentioned there was a dust-up on the Senate floor in regards to the tax credit for the fertilizer plant in Lee County. And just kind of tell us what happened there and why it got so heated on the Senate floor.
Well, there's been a lot of heated conversations. It's called personal points of privilege in the morning. And the majority party, the Democrats, have been beating up the governor pretty bad on this. I personally think that I'll leave my personal opinion out of this because I've upset enough people. But I will tell you that the governor, Senator Hogue, got up and said some things that were not flattering to the governor, actually called him untruthful 2 different times, and then what I just said, that's enough, I'm not going to listen to, is he said, it makes us wonder how many other things the governor's not being truthful with us.
Wow.
So I raised a point, I just raised a point called Rule 9. Rule 9 states that you don't question the intentions of a fellow senator or other state public servant. I got the apology. The president recognized that he was out of order. Senator Gronstel said that he was out of order. Of course, the emotions got really heated down there in the well, but that's what happened.
Okay, good to know. We did discuss that last week, but since you weren't here, I wanted to kind of get your take on it. Just a couple minutes left. Of course, our studio's here in downtown Des Moines, and we've seen a lot of wrestlers out in the Skywalk area. And you guys had a ceremony at the Capitol yesterday with the great Dan Gable. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, actually, it was this morning.
This morning, okay.
Coach Gable came in, and we honored him, and we did a resolution. And you hear about all the bickering going between the Democrats and Republicans. This is actually a resolution that was signed by all 50 senators, and it's to try and get wrestling back into the Olympics.
All right.
And wrestling Iowa is known for its wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Coach Gable is the best ambassador for that sport.
Absolutely.
And one of the best promoters, for wrestling. And it's just, to me, when I think of Olympics, I think of wrestling first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want to eliminate it, and so we're on a little campaign to get it back in the Olympics.
You don't think of table tennis?
No, not actually.
Are there just real quick? Are there other states that are also trying to go through similar efforts?
I'm not sure, but I would guess that this is going to create.
Because Iowa's not the only wrestling
absolutely.
state.
Brad, you might know more.
Oklahoma would be someone that I would look at.
Yeah, there's a lot of governors that are signing on to this.
California's got a lot of good wrestling programs.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I'd just love to share with all the listeners is that it was voted 50-0.
Yeah.
You don't hear about the bipartisan things we do.
Yeah.
100% of us signed on to this effort. The governor has taken this on as an effort as well. And so hopefully we'll get things changed. I'm hearing good things. I did talk to Coach Gable. Ted Bowman and myself kind of came up with this idea, and we're hearing some indications that maybe that they will reverse their decision, but we certainly need to keep the pressure on.
Yep.
And I wouldn't ever want to battle Dan Gable because he said, I'm going to do this till the end. So.
You are absolutely right about that. Well, the most important question of the day, we're in the midst of March Madness, so we have to know, Senator Capuchin, I'll start with you. Who is going to win the NCAA tournament?
It's going to be the team that wins the most games.
Wow. Great answer.
Is that political?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm going to steal his answer. I want Iowa State to go as far as they can. I'm hoping they're going to be national champions.
I do too.
And I obviously want Iowa, and you and I do as well in their tournaments.
Art, your thoughts? Who's going to win? Who's going to win it all?
I haven't done my brackets yet, but
it's a little late. It started this morning.
That's pretty much how I am lately.
You've really been on top of things.
Well, what about
this week.
you?
Louisville.
All right.
That's an easy pick. Everybody's picking Louisville.
All right.
So
Excellent.
they'll probably lose in the second round.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, it's been another great show this week.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, we want to thank you, Senator Brad Zahn, Senator Tim Capuchin.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And Art, as always, a pleasure to be with you as well.
And me.
This is the Iowa Legislative Hour on Webcast One Live. Have a great week.